Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Main Street Media, Utah. This is Talk with Jon. Looking forward to being with you for the next, 2 hours or so. I will be introducing my guest here momentarily, but first, let's get this off to the proper start. And real quickly, also want to mention this. You can not only listen and watch the show weekly, typically every Tuesday. Last Tuesday, I was not able to do the show. There are from time to time that I'm not able to do a show. But typically Tuesdays from 4 to 6 Mountain Time, you can join us here. And the first Tuesday of every month, typically you can join me and Michael Letts. So I'll be introducing him a little bit further and a little bit deeper. But you can go to our website, which is kmmu.org, mainstreetmediautah.org, or you can also go to our X page, our Rumble page, and our YouTube pages, and that will allow you to watch the video, also to share with friends. May I suggest that you do that? I think after today's show, you're definitely going to want to share this with a number of your friends and family, because Michael has some information that you're going to want to listen to and you're going to want to share. But first, before we go any further, I want to give out the show prayer and the show mantra. Show prayer is the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right. So let's bring on my friend, Michael Letts. Oh, you know what? I might have brought on the wrong person. Yes, I did. Wrong one.
You corrected it. You did all right, Jon. It's always a privilege to be with you.
Not my producers. All right. So let's do this. Let's do the quick. Let's tell for. I'm often reminded that we have new viewers and new listeners basically every week. So let me introduce, for those of you who don't know who Michael Letts is. Michael Letts is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. And I believe that number is like 17,000. He also has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. Those interested in learning more can go to his website, investusa.org. That's investusa.org to learn more. Michael, thank you so much for joining us again, brother. Appreciate you being here.
Always a privilege with you, Jon. We greatly enjoy being a guest on your show, and we enjoy what you do, what you stand for. You're helping to make America make its last stand for freedom. We're in an epic battle between good and evil, and some days you have to wonder how the outcome's going to be, but by God's grace, we're going to prevail because we're determined that we have righteousness on our side, and we're not going to quit. That's the key, folks. We're in this fight till the end.
I sure hope so. All right, Michael, since for those of you that do not know, Michael is a chaplain. And so, Michael, if you'd start us off with a word of prayer, ask the Lord to be here with this conversation.
Thank you. Let's open up with a word of prayer. Our Father, the great God, creator of the universe, we come before you. We thank you for the time that we have to share truth. May all that we say and do glorify and honor you, and may you give us the wisdom and the words to say for generations to come. In Christ's sake, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you doing that. Okay, folks, let's do this. I want to go over. So we've got a number of topics that I'm wanting to cover with Michael Letts. I'm going to ask that he start with the Charlie Kirk, if there's any updates there. But let me list out the rest of the topics, Michael. Democrat video telling the military not to follow unlawful orders. So these are the subject points. And there's a lot that we can dive down on all of these. But Democrat video telling the military to not follow unlawful orders. The shooting in Washington, D.C. of the National Guardsmen. The Islamicists picked up in Texas. Democrats saying the Secretary of Defense Hexstead should be tried because of killing the Venezuelans after their boat was disabled. Is that story even true? Is one thing that we need to find out. Do you think Maduro is going to be allowed to leave Venezuela eventually by Trump? And if Trump won't let him go, why will he not let him leave? What do you think the timeline is for military forces to go into Venezuela? And then also want to talk about MTG stepping down. Where do you want to start first?
Well, let me start off by apologizing for the little fiasco just a second ago. We have, I don't remember if I've told you this, John. I think I did. We have 11 Doberman puppies.
Oh, no, I didn't know that you had 11 Doberman puppies.
You know, I've got 2 canine service dogs, police dogs. One is a male Doberman. It's a fawn, which is a light brown. They're very rare. And then I have a red female. And they decided to surprise us with a litter of 11 Doberman puppies, 2 of which are white, which are extremely rare. And it is the white one that decided to run over here while you were speaking and give me a quick greeting. He got his foot caught in the cable and pulled the camera down. So my apologies for that. But outside of that, everything is good.
Well, I'm going to say this. If you need to pause for a moment so you can take care of the Doberman, we understand. But, well, you know what?
That's what Garrett's for.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way. That's life. We deal with what happens in life and we move on, right? So no big deal.
That's exactly right.
And I'm definitely not going to be one that says, how dare you have dogs? Okay. So where do you want to start? Actually, I'm going to ask Charlie Kirk, do we have any updates on that?
Yes, we do. And here's what's developing so that people, I'll put it into a nutshell. There is some, we could spend 3 or 4 hours going over the details. Here's what it is in a nutshell. Candace Owen, close friend of Charlie, communicated often, has unveiled text and transcripts that question not just who assassinated, but the purpose behind the assassination. Was Israel involved? Was Mossad involved, etc.? The documentation is pretty secure. Now, what is the flip side? You have now a rally of people on the conservative side who are saying that she is grandstanding, that she's making this up, although they're not disputing the validity of the text or their content, that she is using it to grandiose herself and to create division among the party. I think, the bottom line is this, John. A lot of what she says seems to have great merit. I think as we continue to move forward a little bit of time, you're going to see, I don't think anybody questions that we did not get the factual layout of what happened initially. And that there have been too many retractions, too many changes in stories from our governmental officials, that there's obviously a lot more to this. Is everything that Candace putting out, I'm not saying she's deliberately putting anything out wrong, but I'm just saying, is everything being put out accurate? That remains to be seen. But is some of it accurate? I don't think anybody's disputing that. So we're still investigating that. And you say, well, what's the big deal? Here's the big deal. We're going to talk about all this with whether it's the Afghan situation, Somalian, etc. And we're going to have questions for our government. And what you're going to begin to wonder at the end of this program is, whose side is the government on? And quite frankly, do we have a divided government? is President Trump leading the government, but half of the government is trying to undermine and destroy him? These are all valid questions that need to be raised. I know when I say that, people say, I'm going to turn it off. Don't turn it off, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm going to give you the facts. You're big enough that you can figure out the information on your own. But let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. And if you think you know the question of these answers, fantastic. If you don't, I'm going to encourage you to do more research and you formulate your own opinion. So that's kind of where we're at. Charlie's the tip of the iceberg. And remember the key question. You want to know what's the key issue about Charlie? Did the government tell us everything that occurred? Were they involved and why?
I let me put it this way. I don't know that the government was involved, but I would say the government is involved in making sure not all the information that it could be known by the public and should be known by the public is out. And I would not accept from the government, especially the way they started out with the big high profile, having the governor of the state of Utah and Kash Patel both do a press conference. Hey, we got our guy 33 hours after the shooting. We got our guy, and giving a lot of information. Now, almost everything that we have been told is in question. I think the only things that stand to me that have any still stand out or happen to be there that I think is real is Robinson probably was there on the roof and is involved in the transgendered lifestyle. And there was a lot of chatter amongst those chat groups the day before about Charlie Kirk possibly not making it out of Utah. And there was some I told you so. Now, the government gave out a little bit of that, and then it's been crickets for the last several months. And I go, how much of that was a story to divert people's attention? I mean, we also know that there was another political operative, someone that's really political, that right as soon as the shooting happened, a guy in his 70s, that I believe he's 70 years old, said, I did it. Come to find out, a couple months later, he's got child porn on his phone. So I mean, there is some real not winners, shall we say, right, surrounding this. So that's my thoughts. I don't feel like we're getting the truth. And the way things are looking through the court system here in Utah, I don't think they want the truth to be known.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, we take a look at not just Charlie, but the presidential attempt assassination Butler, the one at the attempt at the golf course, etc. The question that continually comes that is hard for the government to answer is, you can't get that close or pull off these kind of jobs without having aid and assistance, knowing schedules, having access, having people. There's a lot of protocol things that didn't go right with Charlie. They immediately closed down the crime scene and bulldozed it down, basically. They totally redid it without the coroner ever even being able to come and sign off. You never touch a crime scene without the coroner's official acknowledgement that he has completed whatever he needed to do to review. There are so many things that happen that are unanswered as of yet. And I think when you have unanswered official questions, it causes great concern among the American people. And we're going to talk about that with a number of other things as this program continues to move along tonight.
Well, let's hit those other things. So where do you want to go next?
Well, why don't we take what's most, there are two very pressing issues. There's Venezuela, and then there's the shooting of the National Guardsman in D.C., but there's a tie-in. He came from a program. The same person that came from the program that was building a bomb to set off in Dallas Fort Worth. The same group from which another refugee came. That people are not reporting this. Is just a week or two before in Fairfax, Virginia, had been stopped by law enforcement. And I mean, the tape, the video is there. He was very clear. He had been a quote unquote asset in Afghanistan. He hated this country and was going to do damage to it. And he pulled out a gun. He lost that gunfight, by the way. And when the police returned fire. But you have three individuals, and there's a lot more we can talk about, but those three immediately come to mind. We're all coming from the same program. So let's talk about how did we get to this program and what its implications are for America.
So just what is in the program? Let's define that a little bit more. What specifically is it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Well, let's talk about how we got to that program. Here's what happened. Of course, we went over to Afghanistan because the Taliban was there, and we had viewed the Taliban as assisting ISIS in the 9/11, and we eliminated the Taliban. Then we had a new president, President Trump, who said, look, it's not our role or responsibility to be the cop for the world. We're too spread out, too thin. We're going to withdraw and pull back. And you remember his plan was very simple. We were going to take the troops out of Afghanistan, except for we were going to keep Belgrade Air Base. Okay. Why? Because in less than an hour from China, China is one of our most critical adversaries. And we needed that presence to be able to monitor, maintain, and God forbid, we needed to be able to avert a confrontation. We needed to have that asset there. So we were going to keep that asset. In keeping that asset, we were going to keep a contingency of 5,000 troops there. Now, the second thing that Trump did was he let the leaders of the Taliban know, you mess with a hair of any of our American presence or our assets that we are keeping there, assets being those Afghanis who had helped assist American soldiers in situations in Afghanistan. We got every picture of every house. We know where you live. You won't be around any longer. We will eliminate you immediately.
I want to
bring up the Taliban got that message loud and clear.
I want to bring up a story. Wasn't one of the leaders in Afghanistan, I want to say the Taliban leaders, brought to the White House? They came to the White House and he was shown a picture. Would you tell us that story?
Yeah, I mean, that is correct. When there was discussions about our withdrawal, that was the first thing, is the leader of the Taliban was brought. And as they began to discuss, we're going to start to pull back. We're going to keep Belgrade Airfield, et cetera. The president said before the meeting was over, oh, one more thing, bring me a picture. He handed him a picture. The guy looked at it and says, that's my house. Why are you having me a picture of my house? He said, I don't just have a picture of your house. I have a picture of every one of your leaders and every one of your commanders' houses. We know exactly where you live. We know exactly how many kids you have. We know exactly where they're at. Mess with one of my guys. Harm one of their hairs. And this will no longer exist. It'll be immediately eliminated with you in it. Do I make my point loud and clear? There was never a single incident after that. You remember before that, they had still been shooting and killing soldiers that were stationed there. Not a single incident from that point on for 18 months. They got the point loud and clear. They still had the point. This is important to what we're talking about. They still had the point when the president said we were going to withdraw in this fashion. So everything was set for an orderly withdrawal. You remember we had a fiasco here in America on the election in 2020. And many, I understand it, 68 to 70% of Americans believe that there was fallacy that went on in that election, and it was not the will of the American people. That having been said, regardless, there was a change of administration. The Biden administration, as we're finding out now, Joe Biden didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have the mental capacity. He had a bunch of liberal ideologists that were trying to make their statements, and they decided, okay, Trump wants to get out of Afghanistan. We'll get out, all right. We're all going to leave tomorrow. And they didn't even know what they were doing. They pulled out the military first, left Americans behind, et cetera, turned over the list of who are assets. That means the personnel, the Afghani personnel who'd assisted us, turned it over to the Taliban. What do you think the Taliban was going to do with it? They started hunting them down to kill them. So what happened at that stage then was they realized, whoop, this might not look too good from an image wise. We better do something about it. Now, this is the liberal left. Well, let's just bring them all to America. Okay. So they established a program, an asylum program for Afghani refugees who had assisted or been assets for American personnel. So the question was, do we know who they are? Do we know where the records are at? Remember now, the CIA keeps these records. No, we don't have time to pull all that together because they're moving. Remember the Taliban? Oh, it'll take them 2 months to take over the country. In 2 days, they were coming in. I mean, they advanced their cause very quickly. So the decision was made by the CIA. No, just say, hey, if you helped, raise your hand, go jump on a plane. When you get to America, we're going to vet it then. Now, who was going to vet you then? The CIA. Okay. So we brought in over 160,000 left Afghanistan and were brought here to the United States. We didn't vet any of those people. We didn't have the capacity to vet those people. They just said, if John just said, I help, get on the plane. Now, once we got them over here, what did we do with those 160,000? We placed them in communities like Dearborn and others because their religion is they're the Muslim jihadists. And we placed them where we thought they would be comfortable. So we put them in various communities in Texas. Texas is a big Muslim community. Dearborn, Michigan, Washington State has a bunch of them, by the way. So does Oregon. We moved them around, and then we just kind of left them there. Now you say, "Oh, the poor people starved." Oh no. When I say left them, we still took care of them much better than we did in the American system. They had everything they needed and then some, but they were bored. So what do? They go to where the rest of them congregate, the mosque. They hang out with their people. What are they teaching in the mosque? This is a question that's worth bearing now, right now, in this country. We know what's being taught in the mosque, but we're doing nothing about it. What are the mosques teaching? America is a bad place to be. America should be overthrown. America is the great Satan. So they're hearing all this. They're sitting here with nothing to do. They're being radicalized down in this country. And now they move forward. We just talked about the 3 incidences that have happened. So here comes the question. The first question for the night, John. We had an agency that is notorious for doing nefarious things under the name of the U.S. government, called the CIA. Explain to me why they didn't do their job this time. And were they trying to help position people to be in locations so there could be a broader sense of undermining our government as time progressed? And of course, that time has now progressed.
If you're asking me a question, the answer is
I'm asking
yes.
all of our I'm asking all of our listeners a question.
I
We need to consider that.
That is the case.
We definitely need to consider that. And you say, well, are we talking about just that? No. Guess what other programs? They have been partnered with the State Department. We have the Somalian program, where we brought all the Somalis over under the same premise. We didn't vet them. We just brought them. Haitians, go on, and we place them in communities, and we allow them to undermine our authority, to undermine our values, and we do nothing about it. Now, you remember the CIA is part of, you would say, well, the CIA shouldn't be involved. They're foreign. Well, they classify themselves as being involved because they're bringing them foreign and bringing them to the United States. But so here's a number of things that we have to look at. On the first problem with Afghanistan, John, if we'd have had the right policies in place and we'd have done it the way the Trump administration said to do it, and we'd have maintained presence in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base, and we'd have maintained that threat. You harm one of Americans or our assets, nobody will find you by the next morning. They could have stayed in their own country. We didn't need to bring everybody here. Why do we always feel like we need to bring everybody here when your values, your culture, nothing agrees with what we do here? What do we think you're going to do when you get here? Who's in charge of our foreign policy? Now, that's a very valid question because you only have supposedly 2 people that are doing it. CIA, the State Department.
Democrats. I'm going to say it's and it's not just the Democrats. It's the socialist, communist Democrats that are in control of that.
Well, let's probe a little further here, John. who was the director of the CIA under Obama, and who has all his assets that he brought to that agency for years? John Brennan. Now, John Brennan is a devout Muslim and communist. I'm not making this up. I'm not labeling. You can go on video and hear him declare it himself out of his own lips. So we have now had a Islamic jihadist who is John Brennan and communist running our intelligence agency for almost a decade. Who do you think he brought in to help him get this accomplished? And how do you think he set the stage for what we just talked about, using our own government assets against us to help set the stage for an insurrection? Now,
Who
we're
brought
going
in
to talk
John Brennan?
Obama.
A Christian, right?
Yeah. I think he was a Christian during the campaign. After he was elected, he was a devout Muslim. And you look at his cabinet, you look at his advisors, the female Jared, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they were all devout Muslim. Okay. And that's just the way it is. We just call it like it is. Let's just call the facts. So you had that's being said. Now we're going to take a little digression about another thing we're talking about on your show, but you're going to see how they tie in together. Because remember, we're talking about a playbook that the CIA has. This is not imaginary. I'm not thinking about this. I've seen it. I've known it. I know what we've got in the intelligence community. The CIA for years, nobody can argue this. This is fact. Has been utilized to overthrow governments all across the world. We've taken them down. We put it in who we wanted to be in. Interestingly enough, CIA took down the Shah of Iran. You say, well, the Shah wasn't taking care of his people the right way. Took care of a whole lot better than the Ayatollah did. I can promise you that. But we were responsible for the bringing down of the Shah in Iran. That's just one. And we could go through a whole list. It would take the rest of the night of what the CIA has done. Do you think they just sit there one day and say, I wonder how we're going to do this one today, John? They have playbooks. They have plans in place as to how they do this. One of the key pages in a playbook for an overthrowing of the government by the CIA is dealing with the military content. And here's what they do. They first of all project, folks, you can trust the military. Now, why would they say that? They want you to believe that the military, if all else fails, watch what the military does, okay? Because the military is the one who's going to protect you and take care of you should our government come in under fire or should it begin to collapse and begin to fall apart. So then they do that. They give that portrayal. Then they go to the next stage. Now, the military you can trust, but the dictator, the commander in chief, whoever it might be, oh no, that's another story. Because he does unlawful orders. So, military, now that you've got a good feeling about yourself and you think that people like you, don't jeopardize that by following an order that you just don't think is right. Now, notice how they phrase this. They don't say, here's an unlawful order. We're going to go in and murder every civilian male 18 and under or 18 and over or they don't give you a specific. There's no orders that have been given. They just want you to think, John, that if for some reason this doesn't just sit right with you, you can declare it to be unlawful. Now, what is the purpose in the playbook? They don't want you to come in and fight your fellow man. They want you to take the position that I don't feel comfortable with that order of quelling an insurrection or an overthrow. I'm going to sit out. The military is going to stand down and allow y'all to figure it out. Y'all fight it out among yourselves, and then we'll figure it out. Once they have been able to accomplish getting the military presence to feel like they just need to stand down, now they can take a very small group, militia, whatever you want to call them, their people, and begin to move forward with an insurrection and a coup d'etat. Now, that is their playbook. Now, let's ask you the question. Have you seen any evidence of that being played out in America in the last 30, 60 days?
The question is what have I not seen of that playbook carried out in the last 60 days? The answer is I would say I've seen it all played out. And that is why I'm so glad you're here today, because just let me be very frank. We've had the movies produced by Obama where a Trumpian type figure is in the White House. The military, some military unit goes a little haywire, shoots some people, shoots civilians, and then the whole military uprises and goes at Trump. It goes to the White House, and we wind up having somebody shoot the president. And there is major martial law, a major uprising. I think they're setting the stage, and that group was called Western Alliance, the Western Alliance. Why does that matter? Gavin Newsom went on a late night show. I forget which late night show it was, but he went on the late night show. Jimmy Kimmel. And he used the phrase, we're pulling together the Western Alliance. And Jimmy Kimmel showed put up a map of the United States, and it had all the West Coast in like green, and then like a couple of the like New York and a few states on the east side of the country in green, and then everything else was like a beige. And Gavin Newsom said, yeah, we're putting the Western Alliance together. There were people at that very moment after those words got out of his mouth, there were a number of people in the crowd that started to clap and cheer. They knew what he was saying. They knew what he was putting down. So I would say that this is being aligned, and it's been in motion, and it's in motion. And that's why I'm going to say, all of a sudden, the Democrats released that video. I guess it's Captain Kelly. I guess he was a captain.
He's a naval captain, which would mean
naval captain.
The equivalent rank of that in the Army is a colonel.
Colonel, yeah, I was about to say the equivalent of a colonel. And the other thing that really made me go, whoa, is there were a couple former CIA, and so this is all legislators and former CIA. I'm like, so why are we having the CIA talk about this? So they hey, military and intelligence, if you're unlawful orders are being done. Now the bottom line is, to me, that statement is like, duh. Of course you're not supposed to follow unlawful orders. You're taught that when you go into the military. You're taught about I forget, is it there was an Army lieutenant, I believe it was, that killed a bunch of innocent people that were unarmed civilians. The Da
Nang in Vietnam.
What is it?
It was a Da Nang in Vietnam.
Da Nang, okay. And that's talked about when all the
to this day.
When you go into the military, that's one thing that, if I understand, it's even it's taught in basic.
That's correct.
Okay, so that is like the biggest duh. When you get 6 members of Congress with a very slick editing, with a very slick, TikTok type post, and saying ignore orders, and then within like less than a week, I want to say it was less than a week, someone goes and shoots the
National Guard member
and the Army National Guard member from, I believe it's West Virginia.
That's correct.
I'm going, as soon as that video came out, I'm like, and it was CIA. I'm like, ooh, CIA is the one that goes and does this in other countries. We're having the CIA perform the same thing right here.
Right out of their playbook. And here's the question. Let's pause for just a moment and really examine this to make sure we've answered everybody's questions, because there's a lot more I want to be bringing out that ties this is a whole 2-hour conversation about where we're at and where we're headed very quickly. Let's take this one issue. We're talking about the 6 congressmen. You say, oh, what's wrong with telling people not to obey an unlawful order? Well, John, you hit on it to begin with. First of all, that is given and basic. Okay, that is understood. By you bringing the question out, you're implying that there is, and as they are saying, there is unlawful orders currently being given by this commander in chief. So, what do I want you to do? I want you to begin to distrust this commander in chief because he is currently giving unlawful orders. Now, if you're going to make that statement, and you didn't make it exactly the way I said it, but that was definitely the implication, you better be able to back it up. Now, what have we seen since that statement was made? We have questioned every one of those members of Congress, and they are now on the record as having to validate, saying, no, we are unaware of any unlawful orders that have been
They
given.
were all asked,
Correct.
can you name a specific, unlawful order? And none of them could.
That's correct. So the question then becomes where I want our viewers to ask themselves. Remember, we're engaging you viewers. I want you to come up with your own opinion. Why even say don't obey an unlawful order when there's never been one given in this particular by this commander in chief? What is your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? Now let's move on to the next issue. We just talked about some of the concerns we have with one agency that has proven itself to have greatest concerns ever since JFK. Okay, and I don't think anybody.
Okay,
I think
I wanna
everybody
go to this.
knows
Can
what
I
we're talking
go
about.
back to the CIA? Because I
Sure.
think the CIA and this group, these three men that you talked about, the guy in Texas, the shooter of the National Guard's members, and the other guy that was
Fairfax, Virginia.
okay in Virginia. They all they were all supporting one specific unit.
That's
It's the
correct.
My Lai massacre in Vietnam, is what my
That's
producer
correct.
just put up. So there are three of them. Now, were they working for the CIA, or were they working with special forces? I can't remember which one.
CIA.
Okay. They all come here, they all get radicalized, and they all go do about either to create mayhem or did create mayhem. And two of them were going to do it on the same day. One took action, went all the way from Washington State to DC. And then the other one that was in Texas, saying he was about to do major harm, put a TikTok post out. Thank heavens that's one part of the socializing that he got into, so it could be caught
Right.
before he was able to carry it out. And the week before, we'd had don't obey lawful orders. It puts doubt in everybody's minds on what to do. At least that's my opinion. So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and let's tie in. I'm glad you parked here for a minute because let's complete the cycle on the intelligence agency. Let me talk about what's being said inside. Is look, yes, they were assets for us in Afghanistan, and yes, we recruited, vetted, whatever word you want to use, for their usage in Afghanistan. We would have never signed off when they're being brought to the United States. That's what they weren't vetted for. They were vetted as to whether we could count on them to assist us in Afghanistan. And quite frankly, that's even very questionable because most of them that we're talking about now, as we begin to dig further, had strong ties with the Taliban. Okay, that was one of the problems that we had. If anybody recalls news stories, you hear about it all the time. One of the Afghani assets blew himself up in an American installation, or shot 4 or 5 before they were able to take him out. We always had problems figuring out who our true assets were, who were those that just put on the front so they could get close enough to kill Americans. So the question from the CIA standpoint is, well, we would have never vetted them. So here's the question that I always push back when I raised with that point. Then why didn't you say something? Why did you allow them to say the CIA would vet them when you knew good and well, I could have used a stronger word, but good and well, that you had no intention and no ability to vet them? Why did we sit silent? Oh, well, that would have been the director. Somebody look here. You talk about unlawful orders. If somebody's doing something, or a director's doing something to undermine the security and the sanctity of the United States, you have an obligation. It's called whistleblowers to go to Congress to make sure it's understood the implication of what happened. I never saw that. Why didn't I see it? Because I believe that there is not just a person or a former director. I believe you have a large contingency now of those within the agency who espouse to the philosophy of undermining and destroying this country. And that's just one. We're going to pick up on an awful lot. I'm not done picking on agencies, okay? As we move forward in this conversation we're having tonight, let's talk real quickly about one that's very concerning: Secret Service. Is anybody listening to my voice tonight willing to stand up and say, you know, we think the Secret Service has done the most outstanding job of protecting this current president of any agency we've ever seen? Or have we raised questions, severe questions, time and time again with Butler, golf course, and other things? Now, remember, they're charged with protecting the commander in chief. If they are allowing the president of the United States, the commander in chief, to be in situations that, quite frankly, are extremely risky and not providing the proper protection, are they tying in and communicating with perhaps other agencies that are attempting to make sure that the programs of a current president are not implemented? And if we're going to block the programs, let's block the person doing it as well, and let's make sure that he understands he is not really protected, and he better watch what he does, or he won't be around much longer. These are valid questions the American people need to ask. Let's talk about our law enforcement, federal law enforcement. You know, we were supposed to be having cleaning out the bureau. Just take the bureau as one, okay? Cleaning out the bureau. They got 38,000 employees. You put in a director, a deputy director, down to clean it up. How do you think you're going to clean up 38,000 people who have, when you take a look at the history over just the last decade, have been involved with so many things trying to undermine our foundational law of order, doing things like in Mar-a-Lago, we can just go down the list, et cetera, things, lying on FISA applications, et cetera. How do you think that we're supposed to trust them? Are they part of this? You see how we're building a pattern here. You've got all these government agencies. Whose side are they on? Can I ask that question? Whose side are they on? Let's talk about the Department of Justice. Oh, no, the Department of Justice is doing great. All right, we've done a fantastic job of identifying the nefarious activities. Can I ask you tonight, how many indictments can you tell me about? Or do we have a tiered justice system because you happen to be in a particular position or a particular threat or whatever word you want to call it? We're not going to mess with you, and we're going to leave you alone. What does that do to our whole concept of the foundation of this country based on being law and order, equal justice for all, as the Constitution says? And so now let's talk about another one. Let's talk about the State Department. How many agencies within the State Department do we know as of today? We have documented evidence. You stole, let's use the right word, you stole our money out of Congress, out of the Treasury, and you gave it to actually terrorists and global terrorists. You ran it through NGOs so that they could do it, so that you could kind of try to keep your hands clean. How many do we know? We've documented that today.
Like,
how many indictments have you seen?
AID.
USA. How many indictments have you seen because of it? As you see, so the question becomes, the president, and this is my point to people say, oh, he's your friend, you're trying to defend him. No, the president is a man, okay? He's not Superman. He's just a regular man. A government is one of the biggest operations in the world, the U.S. government, okay? You can't expect him to know everything and perform every job in the U.S. government. What does he do? He puts together a cabinet who are then supposed to put together their staff to go in and perform the task that have brought him into the election to begin with. What is one of the key things that brought him into the election? We're going to drain the swamp, whatever slogan you want to, clean the house, restore law and order, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if they're not doing that, What should the president be doing? Thank you for your service, John, but you're gone. I'll find somebody that can do it. Now, if he's not being able to do that, the question becomes why? And how much time do we have before the clock runs out on this game? Let's talk about that real briefly. If we lose the House and the Senate in 11 months next year in 2026, the last 2 years of the presidency will be the same as his first presidency. He'll be a lame duck. He won't be able to get anything accomplished. It's not that he doesn't have the heart, not that he doesn't want to, but Congress will dictate what happens. Since I mentioned that nasty word, let's talk about it for a minute. Congress. How many members of Congress do we know? I'm not asking you for the answer because this is American people doesn't know the answer, but they know there's something going on. Do we know that have been involved in making sure money went to USAID so that it went back to them? Or perhaps involved with human sex trafficking and getting kickbacks from it? Have done nefarious things that we know about, okay? But yet no action is being taken. Let's talk about our judicial system. How many activist judges do we have out there that have basically given the finger to the Supreme Court and said, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't care whether you like it or not?
Michael,
And the Supreme Court has come back and said,
the better question is how many non-activist judges do we have? That's the better question.
And that is the better question. And so what did the Supreme Court do? No, you shouldn't do that. Now that's it. Did the activist judges take heed? Of course not. They're continuing to do it anyway. What has the Supreme Court done now? They're silent. Why are they silent? Because they know our Constitution only created a Supreme Court. All the other judges were created by Congress, okay? And who has the authority to discipline them, to get rid of them, to control their budget? Only Congress does, not the U.S. Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court recognizes that if you want to do something about a corrupt judicial system, you're going to have to do it, Congress. You're going to have to bring. Now, you say, oh, great, that's going to happen tomorrow. Why would a corrupt Congress want to discipline people that they're doing the same thing? Do you really think that's going to happen? So the question then becomes in the next hour, I know we've almost used an hour with this, we're setting the stage. What are we going to do about all this? Because now I think there's a valid question. Whose side is the majority of our government on? Do we have a nation divided, not the nation, a government divided, and we have a person who is trying to figure out how to drive this car with both wheels trying to go in the opposite direction? Folks, I know, and I'm one of them. Sometimes I can be overly critical. I haven't seen enough action. We haven't moved quick enough. I want you to pause for a moment and realize the difficulty of driving a vehicle that the steering wheel doesn't work and put both wheels in the same direction. Both wheels are trying to go in an opposite direction. You're stuck in the middle. So we're going to talk. There are solutions, but they're not going to be what the people want to hear, but we're going to need to talk about them as we move forward, John.
So one thing that's commonly being talked about, these cabinet members that go in, especially like the DOJ, under the FBI and intelligence, is they bubble wrap the presidential hey, I want these people put in these positions, and then they bubble wrap them. And bubble wrap them means they control them. They give them only information that they want to make, that the state wants them to see. And I'm going to the deep state. Well, I'm going to tell you significant players in that deep state. Barack Obama and his crew are
no question
absolute players in that. John Brennan is an absolute player. Well, John Brennan had his security clearance taken away from him. Do you think that matters to John Brennan?
Absolutely
do you think
not.
He's still not getting any information? Guarantee you he is.
Exactly right.
So what they do is they make sure that they, right underneath those presidential appointed positions, they put in place the people they want. So they make sure and give them a ton of information to keep them, give them these different pieces of information to make them busy, not let them see information that they should be seeing. Like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to bring up Epstein. Michael, you've told me that there was a safe that had a bunch of files in it and drives and so forth that were in there there was when they went in and did a search, they didn't have the specific warrant for that. They
Wait,
took
let me throw this. Yeah, just you said we took pictures of it, so we know it exists.
they took pictures of the content, and then they left the building.
Correct.
So we know that. And then when they came back, what happened?
Content was gone.
And so we know that there is, and we don't know exactly what's on that content, but I don't think it's hard to assume. I mean, I don't know anyone that puts cameras in every single bedroom of their home.
You know, and to add credence to what you're saying, John, is Alan Dershowitz, who was the attorney, one of the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, just because he's an attorney for him doesn't make him a bad person. Alan Dershowitz was one of the attorneys. He has come out as of yesterday and publicly said, almost with tears, I'm telling you, I saw them. I know the list and the names that are there, and they are being withheld. They are being hidden. They are not being transparent. They are not telling you, I can tell you this under oath because I've seen it and I know it. I was part of making sure that they were recorded. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. What is the mainstream media? Alan who? I don't think we need to report that story.
I haven't even heard that. And I'm in that this is the stuff that I listen to. I have not heard that. You're telling me new information that I didn't know about. That's how deep it's. I mean, this is something that Ben Shapiro should be reporting on, right? No,
Correct.
Ben Shapiro wouldn't dare.
Should be, but he ain't gonna touch it. And this gets back to you asked the first question when we started. What's going on with Charlie Kirk? What is Candace saying? Candace is saying, why is the Epstein file so difficult to get released? We know there are names on it. Nobody. Here's what's interesting: the Democrats have tried to say or hint that Trump's name is on that file. And here's the problem that they have with it.
One of the things that one of the things that has come out, I've heard this from on many different platforms, is that Donald Trump and I want to say Roger Stone was on someone else's show, and they said, Roger, I've been told the information that Melania Trump is in the Epstein, that Donald Trump was told Melania Trump was in those Epstein files as a hooker. Now that, and he goes, we know that to not be true, but that's what's in the Epstein file, and that's what they want to have released. And Roger Stone did not deny that was in that Donald Trump had been told that. Roger Stone is a best buddy of Donald Trump's for like 30 years.
Correct.
And Donald Trump reaches out to Roger Stone on a regular basis. And so, I mean, that's the type. So folks, you want to know, well, what's in there that could, that Donald Trump is being lied to about? That's the type of things that Donald Trump is being lied to about.
And here's what's interesting. We know good and well that if there were anything credible that could be proven, it would have come out. They would have never given him the opportunity to run the first time, much less run again. If they could have sunk him with something that was factual, that cannot be disputed, they would have done it long ago. You say, well, why don't we just release all that? Here's the problem that we have, and I know we've talked about it before. You had total control of the agencies that had total control of the files, all Democrat, for decades under Obama.
Who was
for 4 years under Biden?
I'm going to say this: who was over the New York office that was at?
Comey,
Comey's daughter.
Correct. So there is a certain validity that when you have total access, could you have gone in and added or subtracted names on a list? You don't know what they could have done with it. So it taints the whole issue. Now, understand, you say, oh, well, then it's hopeless. No, you remember this was all initially brought out in the mid-'80s with the first trial for Epstein, when he was given a slap on the hand, a few months probation, kept out of jail. But by the way, interestingly enough, when you begin to look and talk with the agents that were involved, here's what happened on that story. You had Donald Trump, who began to hear rumors within the club that things were not appropriate.
The club being
sat down.
Mar-a-Lago, right?
Mar-a-Lago, correct. Sat down with some of his help, who happened to be also like Virginia Godfrey's others who are now dead, who were part of, and actually spent time. When I say spent time, they not spent time in a bedroom, spent time 40, 45 minutes interviewing. Tell me what's really going on, what's happening here in my club. They told him. Once he found out, he became infuriated. He went first of all to Jeffrey Epstein and said, "You're out of this club. Don't ever set foot here again." Probably had a few other choice words for him. Then he took it to the FBI. Now, remember, at the time, he wasn't involved in politics, but he had money and he
Okay,
had
so
influence.
this was in the early
Connections.
2000s, right? In the
This was
mid 2000s.
actually in the yeah, I think you are right. I think it was right, the late 1990s, early 2000s. And so they then proceeded, moved forward, starting with the case like they would have done against you or anybody else. Then they get a call. Who would they get a call from? We know this for a fact. From one
Donald
of our
Trump.
agencies, from one of our other agencies, saying, don't mess with Jeffrey. He's one of our assets. Now, the pushback was he got reported by Donald Trump. Donald Trump's got money. You don't think he's going to let it go away, do you? So they figured out, how do we gingerly pop him, bury him, and satisfy that we took care of the situation, which they did. Unfortunately, Jeffrey didn't learn the lesson too well. I don't think it was Jeffrey's fault. I think that there were not just our intelligence agencies, but foreign intelligence agencies. I mean, you have to look at it from this standpoint, John. What better investment, if you're the head of an intelligence agency, than to find a source that can blackmail the top people in the world, and you
Okay,
can
so
control the top people?
I want to say former Israeli Prime Minister, is it Ehud Barak, went
Barack,
to
yes,
his um speaking of Jeffrey Epstein's uh mansion in New York like 30 times. I want to say like within a year. What's
that's
the
correct.
what's a what's a former prime minister doing going on the regular to Jeffrey Epstein mansion? Um
Uh, Good question, because you look at one of his associates, Elaine Maxwell. Elaine Maxwell's father was an agent for Mossad. We know that for a fact. She was involved with MI6, British intelligence. So you begin to
and
see
somehow
how,
mysteriously died on his yacht. After he died, was given basically the top honor, uh, burial honors. He was buried on the Mount of Olives
yes,
by the Israeli government. And is it Max? Ghislaine Maxwell. What was her father's first? I forget what his first name was, but yes. And very interesting, his Ghislaine Maxwell's sister happens to be the top person and owner of an intelligence company.
well, that's a whole nother section for us to talk about, because seems to be that you can make a lot of money, and if you know how to play your connections in government, you can make money on the inside doing nefarious things. You can make more money if you leave and establish your own companies and get contracts to help do the nefarious things you were doing when you were on the payroll of the government. So you begin to see so many different branches as to how this begins to pan out. It gets back to the story that we talked about initially. What side of the Constitution does our government lie? And I'm not saying our entire government is corrupt. I'm saying, do we have agencies or forces within these agencies, considerable agencies, that are working to undermine the Constitution? And you've got a president trying to run a country when half of the agencies are trying to undermine what he's doing. So then you come to the question, is that why we've really got not a whole lot done over the last 11 months? And I think that's probably very applicable to ask that question at this stage.
Here is what I love about my producer. Robert Maxwell was Ghislaine Maxwell's father. Also happened to be a weapons merchant as well.
Correct.
And then Jeffrey Epstein was first tried in Florida when he pleaded guilty to state charges in Palm Beach County court in June 2008. Now, if I also remember correctly, he was like given a really cush prison sentence where basically he could go to his house all day long, and then he had to go and check in. Now, I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, he could be out of prison, then just check himself in at night.
It basically is almost like an ankle monitor situation.
Yeah.
You know, there's certain places. I mean, he had to wear an ankle monitor. Certain places he wasn't allowed to go. He had to check in from time to time. But it was probably a sentence that nobody else in our or very few people ever have gotten in the history of our country. And how does that happen? It only happens when you have other agencies that are able to dictate. You know, first of all, FBI, this is what you will and won't do with it. You know, second of all, our judicial system. By the way, we've all got to work together. So here's what we want done. And that's the way it's been working. And so understand the problem. Here's what we're doing in the first hour of this show. Understand, America, how bad the situation has gotten. I'm not trying to ruin your evening, folks. I'm not trying to ruin your holiday season. What I do want you to understand is that back on something I said a minute ago, if we lose the midterms, we've lost what's left of this presidency. If we lose the midterms, they're going to make sure they don't make the same mistakes they have made. Let me ask another question as we were discussing these issues. Can anybody, our listeners, tell me, what have you heard pronounced that we've done to protect the elections in this country? Election integrity. I mean, you have safe elections
And
now or not?
Venezuela plays into that very big, folks.
And we're going to talk about that next. But, you know, I mean, quick question. Would anybody dare to tell me on this show that yes, our elections are solid and secure, and there's not a single problem, not a single bit of voter registration fraud that will ever occur? And if you can't tell me that, and we haven't fixed it yet, and we lose the ability to fix it because we have a lame duck presidency if we lose the House or the Senate, do you not think they're going to perfect that and make sure that they don't make that mistake again? And we will lose the opportunity to save this country. This is what I want our listeners to understand. I want you to have the greatest and the merriest of Christmases. But we have roughly 11 months to either save this country or lose it forever. And we're going to talk about I want to give one more thing what John's talking about here. When you talk about Venezuela, then we're going to talk about what the solution should be, where we should all be rallying together. But moving on, let's move into Venezuela for just a moment, because that's something that you're seeing in the papers. But let's work our way backwards. What are they saying is the big problem with Venezuela? That we had the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, that on one of the boats that were sunk, that there were survivors when the initial hit, and that Pete had directed there be no survivors, and a second strike was given to eliminate survivors. You say, what's the problem with that? Well, is there anything illegal about that? They would like you to believe that, but what they're trying to say is typically in a war situation, and remember, this is a war on foreign terrorists because of the cartels. We've already established that that's legal, and the president was in his right to do that. But if you're in a war or combat situation, you eliminate or you take out an objective, and there are prisoners who are trying to surrender. It's not usually in the best interest of a company. We don't smile upon, we frown upon you going up and putting a bullet in the back of their head. Okay, you bring in those who survive and use them as prisoners of war. Now that's the basis that they're trying to say. Now let's look at the facts of what actually happened here. It was a large ship. Okay, it was packed with fentanyl and other drugs. It was targeted and hit. When it hit, it exploded. Okay, fires everywhere consuming. After an hour, it hasn't gone down. It is still there. So we don't know for sure how much of the content has been destroyed. There's ways of insulating things from fire, etc. Whether there's still any other players there who could be enemy combatants ready to fight back. We saw no people waving a white flag saying, I'm through, please come get me. We saw no occupants. But we decided that the best move was to make sure that cargo went to the bottom of the ocean to make sure that nobody could get it. And so a second strike was sent. A second strike was not sent because, there's 5 people trying to wave a white flag, make sure that we don't let anybody survive. That never occurred. There are no transcripts to show that. But there are a transcript that a second missile was sent, and it finished the job. Typically, it gets done with the first strike. But in this particular occasion, there had to be a second strike. So now what is occurring? They're trying to divert once again. Remember how this playbook we just talked about with the CIA? They're trying to tell you, you see, you have a commander in chief. Now, bear in mind, the commander in chief is not sitting there at the table saying, okay, I think I want that missile to be fired right now. He has no idea. He has just authorized a policy. Okay, stop drug trafficking on these waters. Put them to the bottom of the ocean if they refuse to. Remember, we've always fired our communicated warning shots, and they've always been ignored. They ignored them, take them out. That's been the key. That's been the standing order. And so even the Secretary of War, Pete said, I kind of sat there for the first few. Yeah, is that the right missile? Are they down? But after a while, because we've done 20 of them, okay, that we sent to the bottom of the reservoir, I let the members on the ground, or i.e. on the ocean, make sure that they know the objective is to make sure these targets are taken out so that none of these drugs can reach America. The commander in the field decided, hey, we still got one burner. It hadn't sunk in an hour. Maybe we didn't do enough the first time. Send a second round to finish it off. Never once did he say send a second round because there may be survivors. Send a round to finish it off. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to portray that it was Donald Trump sitting there at the command center, seeing that there are people waving a white flag and deliberately saying we're going to execute. That's an unlawful conduct by commander-in-chief. You can't trust him, which is why we just talked about if there's an unlawful order, you think it's an unlawful order, disobey, disregard, which is what we're hoping that you'll keep in the back of your mind, that should something occur and there be some kind of uprising, insurrection, coup d'etat, that you'll just say, you know what, I don't want to engage against my fellow American. I don't know if these are fellow Americans trying to do something or not. I think we'll just sit here in the barracks. We're just going to stand down, let y'all fight it out, figure it out, and then we'll figure it out after that. That's what they want.
Okay, so that brings up a little bit of another piece of the puzzle to me that maybe we've covered a little bit, but I really want to point it out. So by saying disobey unlawful orders, what it also does is, and we've talked about that there's I think we've got an October 7th type event coming to us here in the United States. We talked about how there's civil unrest being created. We've got people that are willing to. We know that we have Chinese military members here in the United States.
100,000.
We know how many?
Over 100,000.
Over 100,000. We know that we have Trende Aragua, and where's Trende Aragua from originally?
Venezuela. Interesting. Let me jump in here real quick. The President Maduro yesterday had a press conference inside Venezuela where he threw Joe Biden under the bus. He said that Joe Biden had asked him
called him and asked them to send
Trende Aragua members to this country. For what purpose, he never did elaborate on, but to send Trende Aragua.
And he goes, and basically if I also understand correctly, he's like, hey, we've got transcripts that we can send you if you don't believe me.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, we know that, and I think that is also somewhat out there in the at least in the press, that there was telephone conversations of, hey, go ahead and send people here. So
Yes.
bottom line is, from Venezuela up to the United States. So we've got how many Trende Aragua and how many and they emptied their prisons and sent them up,
Correct.
and not just the regular prisons, but their insane asylums, and sent them up here into the United States. Okay, we've got all these people. All it takes is go to work, boys. The message of go to work, get it done, and we've got that happening. So, okay, all of a sudden there is a message sent out from the president of the United States. Hey, we've got an uprising in whatever, multiple cities. I'm going to guess it happens in multiple cities at the same time. It
Correct.
might start in one, but if they see that it goes well, it will real quickly spread in multiple cities, if not every single state in the United States. So this happens, and then all of a sudden, so we're being set up for a martial law situation in my mind. So what happens next? The police forces are overwhelmed, and Donald Trump has got to say, military, I'm calling up not only the National Guard, I'm calling up the military, and then they can go, well, I'm going to deny, I don't feel right about that. They're also putting out in their messaging, hey, we Democrats get in and we decide that what you did was wrong when you were obeying an order from the president of the United States and your direct chain of command. Now, any command that is given is, when a command is given to the military to follow, they assume that it is a lawful order, unless it's like some scenario where you're go to that village and shoot the women, unarmed women and children.
Correct.
Unless that's basically done, it's assumed to be a lawful order. Well, now you're creating, your military to start questioning their, is this a lawful order? So that is, that delays them taking action on those people. So the bottom line is, we're being set up for something really bad where, no one's going to come and help.
Oh, you're exactly right. And let me very quickly point out to our listeners the problem with the logic of unlawful order. If you allow individuals to determine what is lawful or unlawful, you've destroyed the cohesion and the chain of command that you have. Because here's what it becomes in a war situation. I'm ordered to take a hill. Well, I look at it and say, you know what? That's a tough hill to take. A lot of my men are going to die. Well, that's unlawful to put my men in a position to have them die like that. I don't think that's a good strategy. I don't think it hill's worth taking. I'm not going to do it. It's an unlawful order. You see how it just totally falls apart? Their whole basis in philosophy is this: they want each individual to decide what is a lawful or unlawful order. Now, is that going to be applied just to the military? Of course, it can't do that. It'll apply to everyone. So when I get in the car tomorrow, I'm going to say, you know what? That speed limit sign says 60 miles an hour. I think that's an unlawful restriction of my expression. I'm going to do 100. And you can't do anything about it because I think it's an unlawful order to tell me I can only do 60. You see how it just totally collapses the whole structure that this country was based on, law and order. And that's what they're attempting to do. And we have to keep that in mind. And that is where we're headed right now, unless we do something drastic here in the next 11 months to make sure that we change things and turn this country around.
What are your thoughts on, so let's dive. So I think we've pretty much covered the problems with I'm going to call them seditious six.
Right.
I think they are committing sedition. And one other, well, John, that's kind of hard to prove. These guys just made a bunch of TikTok videos. There was another congressman, so Senator Kelly, and then 5 other Congress people. There was another congressman that was asked to do this, who, for whatever reason, couldn't find the time to get it done, who went on the record and said, I was given the script. Okay, if they're all given a script, then that means it's being coordinated. Who gave him the script?
Right.
And if it's
actually, John,
go ahead.
What happened in that situation was the congressman's exact words were, I told them I would do it, get me the script. And by the time they got me the script, it was too late.
So what that shows you is there was a group, at least a group of people that were putting, it wasn't just a couple of senators and a senator and congressmen got together and said, hey, we don't like what's being done, let's put this together on our own. No, someone was making that happen. Someone was pulling the puppet strings to make it happen. And that's where it could be a RICO case.
There's no question. Rico involves. So let's move, because I want to make sure we leave our listeners with a strategy and hope as to what can occur or what may not occur if we don't do something about it.
I want to
We've
hear
identified.
that. I want
Sure.
to follow up. Do you, so I have a couple very specific questions. Do you think that Maduro is going to be allowed to leave Venezuela? And
He's
if
already been
not,
given the opportunity. He's been given the opportunity. He has called Iran. He has called Honduras. He has gotten offers from both countries. They will accept him for political asylum. So he has that opportunity. I don't think he's going to take it. He's being pressured by China, especially, and by some other the countries, Honduras and others, to let's teach America a lesson. Stand firm. We're behind you. Well, that's easy. That's kind of easy for the little, send a little kid. Go stand up to the bully. You know, we're right behind you. Of course, we're 10 feet behind you. But you go hit him. Yeah, we're going to cheer you on. But that's where we're at now. And so I don't see. But yeah, I think he did have a conversation with the president. I think it was yesterday, and he did ask the question, "What can we do to avert this situation?" The president was very clear. You have to leave. And you say, well, why is the president being so hard-headed? We've given you ample opportunity to quit killing Americans, which is what they're doing. Over 100,000 in fentanyl so far. We have the documentation. This is not hyperbole. You are a member of the cartel. And we understand you're not giving up your livelihood. You're not making money off the presidency. You're making money off of corruption. Okay. And because of that, we don't trust you anymore. And so because we can't trust you, you can't remain as the president of Venezuela. Somebody let the Venezuelans remember they've already had an election. They didn't elect Maduro, by the way. He forced himself back in. He overturned that election and reinstated himself as the president once again. So there's already been an election of who the people want. It's not Maduro. The president was very clear. You let the people decide who's going to govern them. They've already decided once. We can hold another election for that matter. Let them decide again. But it's not going to be you. And that's where we're at.
okay, I want your thoughts on MTG. Now, do you want to get to the solutions or do you want to hit MTG first?
Let's do MTG. MTG. I mean, I know Margaret well, and I mean, she has some great ideas, and she was a very big supporter for MAGA, etc. Let's work our way backwards, because you can always tell the motives behind a person by looking at their character. All right, let's work our way backwards. I'm resigning from Congress effective January the 5th. Okay. So if you're that disappointed in Congress, why are we waiting till January the 5th? Because I have legislation I want to get through. Well, we're in the holiday season. There's no legislation going through. So tell me something I can believe. Give me some hope as to why you're staying on for a month and a half. Because let me tell you the facts. The facts of the matter are this. You have to spend 5 years. That's 2.5 terms in Congress before what we call you are vested. What does vested mean? That means you
Retirement,
get
pension.
your retirement and your pension for life. What is that retirement and pension? Well, they get about $165,000 to $170,000 a year. And you remember, Congress is different. If you retire from, say, public works or the park, you get a percentage, right? No, Congress gets their full pay, along with their full benefits for life.
And their
Health.
benefits are much better than yours and mine.
They have the best health. They have the best everything. Remember, because they make sure that they get the best of everything. So when does her 5-year occur? January the 3rd.
January 5th.
So she's going to wait for 2 days after that just to make sure everything's clear. It comes up on January 3rd, but she's going to actually resign on January the 5th. So my question is, when I raise that question, So since that doesn't really look great, do you think it's possible that maybe you should go ahead and resign now? Just to avert that question, to show people, no, that's not my character. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the cause of the country. I got pretty choice words that were sent back on that. Absolutely not. That's where she's staying. So okay, gotcha. That tells me where your motives lie on one issue, and we can begin to go down the list. And it tells me that you didn't want to stay in the House because this is public. You were going to run for either governor or senator. The president has polling done all the time on his race. Okay. So in Georgia, he had a polling done and threw your name in there as well. It came back very poorly on both of those seats, for the governorship and for the U.S. Senate. So he simply shared that information with you and said, "I don't think I think you should reconsider. I don't think it's a very good idea." You took great offense, and suddenly you began to criticize the president for everything he was doing. Now, it's your right to criticize the president if you want to, but we're looking at the character behind this. And I got to tell you, John, if I'm trading shoes with her, if I'm going to be in her shoes, I think at this stage you want to make sure that people understand that it's your character, that you don't agree, for whatever reason, you don't agree with the philosophy, with the ideology that's being done. And that's what's causing you to step down, not that you're protecting your financial interests and that you've got other opportunities that you're seeking to do. And you don't appreciate other people not supporting what you're trying to do.
I just, when I heard that she was stepping down, I'm like, as much as a pit bull as you have been and claimed to be, to me, that's not the actions of a defender of the Constitution, even if you don't get along with. I don't think Donald Trump has been very good to her the last little bit. I don't like him coming out, when she's standing up and saying, I want the Epstein information, brought forward. And yeah, she voted for it and caused that to happen. But Donald Trump wound up saying, release it. After that, Donald Trump, I think, would have done himself a lot of good had he just been magnanimous and said, hey, let's let bygones be bygones, Marjorie. Hey, you're a tough fighter. I disagreed with you on this, but you're a tough fighter. Way to go. And then if you don't really care for it, you don't need to do it much more than that. And then you don't need to push for any of her other bills that she's trying to do. Right now, she gets to go out and look as like the little wounded puppy. And I actually think that hurt Trump. I think that really has hurt Trump. But on the flip side of the coin, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you like to say that you're a pit bull. Pit bulls stay in the fight. Someone that's a really, up for the fight, like you've tried to claim you are, they stay in the fight and they don't give up and they don't throw in the towel. And I think it's pretty cowardly. Cowardly.
Well, I think one thing that validates what you're saying is, it'd be one thing if we had like a 50-vote lead in the House, but the division is so close between the Republicans and the Democrats in the House. If it appears that there's a rift within the party, you could cause that seat to be, not that I think it will, but you could cause that seat to be flipped to a Democrat side and cause the Democrats to not even have to worry about 11 months, take control of the House, much more quickly than they anticipated. And I think that shows you want out, fine. I'm going to serve the rest of my term. I'm not going to run again. But don't jeopardize everything we're trying to accomplish as a country because you're throwing a temper tantrum. I agree with you. It could have been handled differently on the other side. I think we all know that sometimes somebody is a little bullheaded, shall we say?
Donald Trump is very hard-headed, and I'll even go as far as saying he's narcissistic. I won't disagree with that, but I'm going to say so has every other president that's been in there since at least George Bush. And maybe even you could say some would make the claim that Ronald Reagan was a little narcissistic too. So bottom line is every single president, I would say, has scored in comparison to the average American pretty high on the narcissistic scale. But
I
just
think that
because
position almost demands it,
it does,
John.
it does.
It does.
For you to say, I think on some level, I mean, so my dad was told me like 10 years ago before I started doing a radio show. He was like, so there was a guy that he really, really liked, Tom Drashell, one of the greatest human beings I've ever known. But he's like, John, he's a radio guy. I was a radio host here in Utah on K-Talk, the station that I used to be on. And I consider him a mentor. He goes, yeah, even Tom Drashell is a little narcissistic. He goes, just to be on the radio, you're a little narcissistic. And I'm like, goes to show you what my dad thinks about me now, right? I'm doing this type of thing. So, and to be the president, hey, yes, yes, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but I'm also not having a huge problem with it. What I do want Donald Trump to do a little bit is, kiss and make up a little bit. And unfortunately, it could hurt him. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you're truly the fighter that you've claimed to be, hang in there. And in fact, she's got more power now than she's ever had before.
They only been in for 2 terms. She's in a very unique position compared to most other Congress members that have been there for that shorter period of time.
I've had my questions on MTG for like the last 3 years. And
a lot of people have.
All I'm going to say is her personal life makes me question some things.
Well, I think that adds into what we were just saying. I would prefer to let's take a look at your values to determine why your actions are the way they are. And I think the values are a little concerning.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. What we've got right about half an hour. What can we do?
Well, let's take a look at what they would like us to do. And let's take a look at what the president has been doing. And let's talk about has it worked, and let's talk about what other alternatives do we have within the Constitution to do this. So, what would they like the president to do? And let's talk about the liberal left. Just continue doing what you're doing. Let us pop you. Let us challenge everything with an activist judge. You may eventually get a few things through. We'll block most of it. Let us help you keep your cabinet that will verbally tell you what you want to hear, but at the end of the day, deliver very little results. And let's just let your presidency go through. Hopefully we will take the House or the Senate and give you hell your last 2 years, but at best, we'll let your presidency just kind of fade into the sunset. Now, that's what they would like. What has the president been doing? Let me be careful about my legacy. I don't want anybody to say I did things that were inappropriate. So let's make sure that we do all this through the established system that we have now. We'll implement only those orders that we think are justified. When they challenge them, we won't do anything to move around that challenge other than to take it to court. We'll let it work its way through the court system. Hopefully we will prevail. We'll make some input and we'll get some things accomplished. At the end of the day, we probably won't get near done what needs to be done, but that's the best we're going to get. We'll get a few things done, and that will be my legacy. Now, what do I think our best options are? Let's take a look, folks, and let's just really get honest with each other and with our viewers. We have 2 different philosophies we have within our country. The Democratic philosophy has always been, I don't really care what the law says. I'm going to push it through, and if you don't like it, you can sue it. And eventually, if it gets overturned, I'll apologize for it, and we'll do something else. Okay, that's one thing. You've had the Republican side. Let's be very careful not to create drama. Okay, let's make sure we do everything exactly by the book. If anybody even questions whether the book perhaps isn't accurate or not, let's step back and reevaluate, get a pen and paper out, erase something, whatever we need to do. Let's be extremely cautious. Now, let's look at the results of that over the years. Unfortunately, the Democrats have done an awful lot of damage to this country, and the only way they've done it is they've run it through. They didn't care. They got us to this point where the country is almost sinking. The Republicans have always said, see how bad they are, give it to us. We give it to the Republicans. They cautiously make a few little changes that don't mean anything. And in 2 or 4 years, people say, well, gee, you didn't do anything different than it has already been done. Might as well give it back to the Democrats because, I mean, what difference does it make? I think at this stage in our country, we are at a position that Americans expect to see real leadership and real change. We don't want to hear about it. We've heard too many campaigns where you promised me the moon and you delivered nothing. So, what can you do, especially since we're talking about a divided government? What can you do to actually deliver change and what really needs to be done to really drain the swamp? Or are we all just smoking the wrong pipe and hallucinating and nothing's ever going to happen? I think our founding fathers, God gave them special wisdom when they created the Constitution. Because believe it or not, 250 years ago, they envisioned such a system. Now, what causes the dysfunction? We just spent an hour and a half talking about the dysfunction. We can draw the conclusions in about 30 seconds. We have rogue agencies. We have a judicial system that is compromised. Okay, that is not pure, and we have a party that is determined to lie, cheat, steal elections, whatever needs to be done to regain the power that they feel like they rightly deserve, that they think was taken from them. Now, that's where we're at in a nutshell. How do you overcome that if you have a corrupt Congress, corrupt judicial system, you have agencies that are working against you, and you have a party and the mainstream media? Don't forget to not add them. The mainstream media is supporting all this, trying to convince the American public of the rightness of their cause. When we all know, even the majority of Americans know that no, that's not the right thing. They're not helping the country. They don't care about Americans. They care about anybody but Americans. They don't care about us at all. Well, how do we get around that? The Constitution, I said this before, John, on your show, but let's walk it through practically. Gives one other option. It gives the commander in chief or the Speaker of the House, it can originate in Congress and the Speaker of the House, the ability for what we call military tribunal. You say, oh, no, I don't want martial. We're not talking, martial law is different than a military tribunal. Martial law means that the military goes in and becomes the policing force of the country. They decide curfew from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There are no longer any police officers, military personnel, and they control the country. Martial law, military tribunals are to establish and bring about accountability for one particular thing. The Constitution only allows military tribunals to be utilized for matters of national security. Now, let's go back to the breakdown and see what's happening. Is it a matter of national security to have Congress members who are compromised and who are nefarious in their activities? Does that harm our national security?
Ilhan Omar.
Does our a compromised judicial system, whether it is a federal judge, state judge, does a compromised judicial system affect our national security?
Absolutely.
And does a rogue agency affect our national security? And do former members, whether it's a former president, former cabinet member, former attorney general, whatever, do former members of the executive branch who have gone rogue or who have done nefarious things affect our national security? There's no question that the answer is yes to all those. Now, we have to be careful. I don't just want to accuse, I think John's a bad person. Let's go get him. No, we have to make sure, and we already have this. I've told you, I've seen it. All the files that show these activities are currently in our possession, the government's possession, the executive branch possession. We need to be saying, Attorney General, I know you may be overwhelmed. You may have difficulty being able to bring about justice because a lot of the people within your department are actually seeking to undermine what we're trying to do. Here's how we're going to handle it. We're going to move that jurisdiction over to a military tribunal. You say, why would you say that? Let's talk about what our founding fathers envisioned, okay? They realized this, that if you ever got to the point in this country to where you weren't sure who you could trust or how we were going to become moral and ethical once again, they figured this, that the military who is charged with protecting you would be the last bastion that would have integrity and honor and morals about the compass, moral compass of the country. Not the general officers. Are you trying to blame generals? No. Unfortunately, remember, we said up in the old days, you became a general based on your merit, okay? How you led in battle. The new days, you become a general based on your relationship with the president and whether you can get him to appoint you to give you another star. Because you remember, all stars now, from brigadier general on, have to be approved and endorsed by the Senate and the president. And so it's become a political game. Military tribunals are convened by what we call middle grade officers, captains, majors, lieutenant colonels, etc. They are the people who have led in combat, who have led in battle, who've seen the risk of losing freedom. That's our last bastion of hope. If you don't have integrity in the military anymore, your country's already gone. Because if you don't have integrity in the military anymore, they will utilize their authority to just finish it off and allow us to just go completely down the tubes. So our founding fathers felt the last nuclear option, if you want to use that word, is to convene military tribunals when there is a position to where there is such corruption that there is no other viable alternative. John, I think we're at that point now. I think it is time for the president to convene military tribunals for the issues that we've talked about. Activist judges, let me put you on notice. You will be held accountable for your actions. And if they are counter to the safety of the American people, you will be brought up on charges and a military tribunal will review those. Members of Congress, if you've decided you're going to steal from the Treasury, you're going to abuse your power, we have the evidence, you will be brought up for a military tribunal. Understand what we're saying here. I'm not coming and putting cuffs on you and then taking you to the gallows, John. You remember a military tribunal, you are tried by a jury, 12 members, not a jury of your peers like in the civilian judicial system. It's a jury of military middle grade personnel. And what is their charge? Very simple. Look at the evidence, look at the defense, look at the charge. Is the charge valid? Did you do that? What are the penalties? In the discussion. We don't go through, okay, we're going to have an appeals now. Now you're going to sit for another 2 or 3 years before we decide what to do. Military tribunals are direct to the point, and we move forward with what the determination needs to be. You start with military tribunals, you won't have to use them long, John. Because when members of Congress start seeing they can't hide their nefarious actions, when judicial members understand they will be held accountable, they can't hide their nefarious actions, when past members or current members of administrations and agencies understand that they're going to be held accountable by a military tribunal, you'll see such a complete turnaround within a matter of days that people will begin to say, hey, I don't want any part of that. I'm resigning. I'm leaving. Of course, that doesn't get you off the hook for what you did. Or you think I was bad. Wait till you see. I'm going to tell you what John did. It will all boil to the surface extremely quickly, and we will be able to drain the swamp. You say, well, I don't like that idea. Give me something else. America, I'm open. Tell me what else we have. I don't have any other solution. Solution we're doing now is not working.
Michael, I've told you before, that whole idea scares me.
I understand.
I don't know that,
but where do we stand now, John?
I don't know that we have. You said what other options do we have? I don't know. I don't know.
And it's not just that question. What other options? I'm asking this question, John. Do we think that where we are at today, what we are doing today, is going to work? Now, let me try to defend that position. To the president's credit, he is now issuing executive orders. We're putting a stay and a halt on anybody coming into this country. Okay. We are also going to go back and review everyone who's come in under one of these programs: Afghanis, Somalians, Haitians, etc. A lot of these came in on a temporary basis. I'm going to grant you a visa, and then we'll see what happens after that. We're going to begin to go back and look. How many of you are here illegally because your visas have run out? We need to know that. How many of you are here based on that, you're trying to become naturalized citizens? But when we take a look at the footage of what you're doing, you're out celebrating in the streets about the death of a National Guardsman, saying death to America, and trying to revolt. We don't need people like that in this country. They need to be removed. But what we are saying, John, I understand is very concerning to a lot of Americans. It's concerning to me. But my point back, we get one shot at this. If we can't fix this and it goes the other way, we won't have a country left to be able to recover down the road. I will assure you this, we caught them off guard in the last decade, and we've been making inroads, but they're making sure they push back even harder than they did before, and they'll fix every loophole that we were able to get accomplished to make changes and to make sure they never lose power again.
So I'm asking our producer, he's making a few comments. I'm going to ask him to jump in. So I don't know if he's there, and he'll jump. He was there just a moment ago because he was making typing out comments. All right. So Dwayne, what were you?
Okay, John, I'm here.
Hey, Dwayne. And let me start off the discussion by saying this. I don't get intimidated by people disagree with me. I want the debate because perhaps there is a better solution. I just haven't heard it yet.
No, I'm with you, Michael. I think the only solution is a military tribunal. And I have a suspicion that this shooting in D.C. of the National Guards is going to start that off. Because it's right. Obvious it's obvious that that's what should happen to this guy. Okay. Correct. But then hopefully it will carry on, because I mean, I can't even believe that what happened with Letitia James and James Comey. Dismissed. Correct. Case dismissed. It's like, what? Oh, technicality, this judge wasn't approved by the Senate. So get a judge in there that can be approved by the Senate, or go to a military tribunal, because
the prosecutor. It's the prosecutor that was not approved.
The prosecutor.
But the problem with that, he was John, the president has the right to appoint any prosecutor that he wants. Now, it's true. I'm going to use you as an example. Just because I appoint you, John, you're an interim until you're confirmed by the Senate. But precedent has always been in the past. If you're an interim, you are still the acting U.S. attorney at the time, and your decisions hold. So either the Senate approves you or says, no, we don't like him, find somebody else.
So I want to throw this in. This is off the Gateway Pundit. DOJ to hit Comey, Letitia James with new indictments as soon as this week. Because, and why are we bringing this up? It's because the clock is about to run out on Comey.
The clock technically has run out, and what they're doing is if they don't re-indict, then they will forfeit that opportunity.
So I just think it's funny. It's Comey and James and Comey.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that is hilarious. I hadn't thought about that. But again, as what Dwayne is saying, so we've got a corrupt judicial system. I don't think any of your listeners will call in and say, oh no, our judicial system is pristine. So the question becomes, where do we move to get action? How do we get it done? If we continue to the course that we're at, and I'm just defended the president, he's doing some great executive orders. Of course, good and well, those executive orders are not going to be implemented tomorrow. They're going to be probably in court within the next 15 minutes before this program even ends. But he's trying to make the right effort, but he's being blocked and nothing is being accomplished. Drag it out long enough and we get rid of him. And then, we come back and say, well, yeah, president didn't do anything anyway. Give the power back to us. And is that where America wants to go?
There's one other thing that's going on, is there are bad actors within the DOJ, within the FBI, the CIA, that are putting together cases that have holes in them so they can be nailed on a pill. I think they're purposely having that done so they can get cases dismissed and so forth. So that's kind of my additional 2 cents on that. Is this is purposely being done. This is not accidental. It's systematically being done.
One other thing I'll throw out here is this has been done in Wisconsin now, and Benny Johnson is trying to help rally to do the same thing around the country. Every state that does not put in a voter ID requirement, that it be done by referendum, that we put it on the ballot and let the people decide whether a voter ID should be required or not. Because what has happened, like Wisconsin didn't have it when they got it on the referendum, it passed by the biggest majority just by a landslide. Most people understand that a right this precious should have the ability to know that you're the person exercising that vote. You should have to defend your identity.
And that's another reason why they've brought in all these illegals and give them driver's license. Because as soon as they get a driver's license, they're given the ability to vote in a local election. Then when they have the ability to vote in a local election, well, guess what happens to also be on that? National elections.
Correct. But you see where I'm arguing against myself now. Sorry about that, John. But if you say, okay, that's the solution, let's just make sure that we have voter ID and we'll eventually turn this country around. I don't think we have the time to get that done. I think the country will be destroyed before we can get it passed. So I'm back to the same predicament. Here's the problems, folks. How do you tell me we're going to get a solution that can, in time, to save this great country?
Well, and another thing that happened, a lot of these illegals came in and they were quote unquote paroled. They were given an ID, they were given a social security number, and that just sets them up to vote. So that's why we ended up with 30 million illegal aliens under the Biden administration. Because
they tell me it's up to 50 million now. Yep, they tell me totally, not just Biden's fault, but totally, we have roughly 50 million illegal immigrants in this country.
Well, and think about it. There are only 3.2 million people in the state of Utah, and 30 million just wipes it out 10 times over, and 50 million almost 20 times over.
So you see the strategy. If they can count on a half, 25 million of those being able to have their voter ballot filled in form or whatever it is, make sure they control 25 million ballots. You'll never get anything other than what they want. They've got it locked down.
Well, it doesn't even, if you think about the number of people who are eligible voters, and then you think about the number of people who vote, that number just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Okay.
Correct.
And so it doesn't take much to overrun it. It just doesn't take much.
Which is why I know we didn't talk about it in the show, but Venezuela has had a direct influence in the elections.
I've been meaning to bring that up for about the last 2
minutes.
That thought hit my head. We need it. Okay, so let's actually mention that.
Keep that thought going. Keep that thought going. I got a couple of things to do, so I'm going to drop out. But you guys talk about Venezuela. Yeah, that's an interesting situation.
That is one other piece that I wanted to make sure that we brought up. So why is the situation so bad in Venezuela? You mentioned elections. I've mentioned elections. Let's share with the audience what's going on there.
Well, let's give a 2-second overview. In this elections in our history, we used to do ballots, paper ballots. You went in, showed your ID, checked out your thing. We counted the ballots at the end of the day. Within an hour or two after the polls closed, we knew who won. Then we decided we were going to get fancy. We're going to go to electronics. Machine can calculate it all instantaneously. We can have that voter count within 10 minutes of the vote was closed. The problem that we didn't realize is you can manipulate electronics very easily. Computers can be hacked in. Computers can be manipulated. You begin to put a system together, an operational command. Don't do it in America because that would be kind of dead giveaway. Somebody's liable to kick in your door, find out what you're doing. Do it in a foreign country. You say you can't do it in a foreign country. Sure you can. What do you think you got the internet for? How do you think all these people work when they call to sell you stuff? They're not in America. They're over in Thailand or wherever it is. So they've got their center of operations in Venezuela. China is providing them the infrastructure and the computer technology, the electronic technology, to be a part of this play and hacking on our computer systems. You remember the old adage, "Oh, these elections are the safest they've ever been." Then they did it before a judge with a pencil. A guy that didn't even half know what he was doing hacked into it within 5 minutes and showed how he could change all kind of votes. That's the issue that has been occurring out of Venezuela. They have been the spearhead of it. So there's more at stake than we're just going to destroy the fentanyl supply. There's some national security measures in here that we're not talking about because we don't want to talk about until after the fact, after we've been able to eradicate and eliminate it.
I forget what voting system it is, which computer system that
I
tallies
know,
the
but
vote.
we're being careful not to say because they like to litigate if you use their name.
Yeah, so they've it starts with a D, and this they have dominion in many places, and control over many places. So the bottom line is, you know, there is one of the systems that, one of the computer programs that is used widely here in the United States, where I believe it's in Maricopa County, and I mean, like in key places in many states where Donald Trump lost and things have gone wrong. It always that group happens to be there, and they're based out of, or they were started up in Venezuela. And so
Correct.
Venezuela literally um, has the ability to, if that's where it's based out of, you're telling me the question is, does Venezuela have the ability to control our elections? Michael Flynn, the expressions that are the opinions that are expressed are John's. He said not that of yeah, that's my opinion. The bottom line is uh these the groups that have, or excuse me, the voting programmers, they met with Mike. So they had a couple people meet with Michael Flynn that had been involved in that. And Michael Flynn had a long meeting with him. And then at the very end, he said, "So, how are you guys controlling this?" And he goes, "Sir, we've controlled the elections of over 72 countries around the world.
Correct.
And if that is happening and that same system is being used in the United States, you're telling me there's no way that our elections are, they're 100% solid, that they're the safest and most secure ever? I don't believe it.
Let me
Not
throw
for a
this in
second."
there real quick, John. This is why this is in Venezuela so important. If we eliminate these threats, can you imagine what's going to happen to the Western Hemisphere of countries from Mexico all over who can now have fair, validated elections instead of rigged elections? It will change the dynamics of the Western Hemisphere, including Cuba, by the way.
It will. Well, we're coming up on 6 o'clock. Or 6 o'clock Utah time, 8 Eastern, where you're joining us from. Last thoughts. Actually, let's do this. Quick year in review. What are the big takeaways from this year?
I think the big takeaways are this: we saw that the American people want change. They were excited about it. They've been patient for it, but now they're wanting more than lip service. They've won action. And I don't think we've fulfilled that just yet. And I think we've got 11 months to turn this thing around, or God help us.
Predictions.
I predict
And
the
we'll probably
American.
do a little bit more of that in January. So predictions.
I predict the American people are realizing it very quickly. I predict you're going to see some major changes in the days ahead, and we're going to be leading the charge. God bless, and God bless America.
Well, folks, that was Michael. That is Michael Letts with Invest USA. Michael, once again, your great organization supplies bulletproof vests to the police, first responders, and active shooter vests. Share with us where they can go to find out more about your organization?
Well, they go to our website. That's INVESTUSA.org. They can make sure that they show our first responders and our guards. You remember, our guard doesn't get the kind of equipment that they need unless they've been deployed to a combat zone. And before, Washington, D.C. and American cities were not considered combat zones. So make sure that all these brave men and women have the necessary equipment to come home safely to their families. What a better Christmas present can you do than to help to provide the survival for those who are determined to provide your safety and protection? God bless you. God bless America. On behalf of my family, on behalf of my better half, Karen, and 11 Doberman puppies, of which I see they're coming rushing in here to the studio now to see Dad. God bless you. God bless America, folks. We are not done. We are not going to give up until we win. Victory is ours. Our cause is righteous, and I expect us to enjoy this holiday season and make sure we're up for the fight, because it's going to be one year that will never be forgotten.
Michael Letts, thank you for joining us, folks. This has been Talk with Jon here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. Please go to our Rumble, YouTube, and X sites so you can, and if you go to KMMU, you can go to one of those links that you can click on to find more of the shows, the different shows that we have, and different shows that I've done with Michael Letts. Michael Letts, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.